Good morning. Welcome to Eastern BCP Planning Committee for the 21st of November 2024. If we can start with housekeeping, please.
Thank you. Just quickly to note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point, which is along Braidley Road under the flyover. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum. Mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you. So item 1, apologies.
So we've received apologies from Councillor Marion Lepedevin and Councillor Joe Clements, and substitute members Councillor Adrian Chapman-Law is here for Councillor Lepedevin today.
Thank you. So just introduction. So I'm Councillor Paul Hilliard, the Chair of the Planning Committee. And if we can go around the room for councillors.
Councillor Michael Tarling for Christchurch Town.
Councillor Joe Salmon for Moordown.
Councillor Gillian Martin for Boscombe West.
Matt Gillett, Talbot Woods. Cameron Adams, Kinson.
Felicity Rice, Oakdale Ward.
Adrian Chapman-Law for Alderney and Bourne Valley.
David Flagg, Burton Grange Ward.
Robert Firth, Senior Solicitor.
Peter Burridge, Team Leader, Development Management.
Thank you. Also, Jill Hollyoak is Democratic Services, and online we have Tom Hubbard, who also is lead presenting planning officer. So item 3 is declarations of interest from members. No. Thank you. Item 4 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of October 2024. Anything to raise, or is anyone all in agreement for those minutes? All in agreement? Yep, thank you. I shall sign those. So item 5 is public issues. After officer presentations, we will hear any public speakers, followed by any ward councillors or councillors who will speak. So item 6 is schedule planning, and 6A is West Beach Restaurant Pier Approach, Bournemouth. Over to Mr. Burridge.
Thank you, Chair. This application is application 19168R, West Beach Pier Approach, Bournemouth. And the application is in respect of the variation of conditions 2 and 4 of application 2022-19168Q, which was to allow for the extension of a temporary permission from the 14th of April 2020 to the 16th of September 2026, and to allow the use of the land for a beach dining area, including the installation of seasonal external decking with associated temporary structures and layout and boundary enclosures to be agreed before the start of each summer by the 1st of May annually. So just a reminder of the previous application to which this application relates. That was a 2022 application, reference Q, and that application was the part retrospective application to erect external decking with associated temporary structures and enclosed beach dining area. And that application was approved quite recently, 24th of March 2023. The first slide here is the site location plan. So you can see the site outlined in red with the blue arrow, and that's Bournemouth Pier to the right. This is a summer 2024 aerial view of the application site, showing what was in place the summer just previously. So you can see the external area to which we're referencing on the beach there. These are previously approved elevations which accompanied the previous planning application. So you've got the south and the north elevations there, a bit hard to see perhaps, and the east and the west elevations there. So that's the side elevation, so to speak. perhaps more helpful just to see some pictures of what was there in the summer. So that's the view facing away from the pier. This is another view which is facing away from the pier a bit further along.
So Councillor Bartlett, it probably would be preferential if you did sit in the centre public space just for transparency. Thank you. No, I mean that side. Yeah.
And this is another summer 2024 view of the view towards the pier. So this application is relating to conditions 2 and 4 of the previous permission. So just to recap, condition 2 of the previous permission limited the period expiring on the 14th of April 2025. This application would vary that condition to extend it to the 16th of September 2026. So it would be on or before the 16th of September 2026, the use of the land as a beach dining and bar area, excluding decking and supporting structures, containers and fencing, and any other temporary structures within the area identified on drawing number PO5 Rev B shall cease, and all structures and equipment shall be removed in their entirety and the land restored to its condition before the development took place, and that is as an open beach. And just to show members here, we've got some views, some current views of the application site to show what's left in the winter. So that's a view that's taken from the pier, and you can see the application site with those low-level white hoardings or white barrier. That's a view looking towards the pier. And then this, sorry, another view looking towards the pier. That shouldn't say looking towards the pier. That's not looking towards the sea. So this is what's retained currently. Sorry, just going to go back. Just on that point, there is a condition which requests on the previous planning permission, but only the area of decking and the tables and chairs is retained. I did query why the that fencing area has been retained, and I understand that there were informal discussions with the planning officer that's dealt with this case, and that was agreed on the basis that firstly it stops sand migrating onto the decking area over the winter period, and also that it assisting the seafront services as the fence dictates the tells the tractor drivers the extent of the decking area. Apparently there was some concern when they were on the beach that they would damage that decking area. So I just anticipate that's a question which might be raised as to why that screening area has been retained. So I think that's probably been done informally, but it has been done in discussions with the planning officer, as I understand. And the other condition which this application relates, that's the condition with regards to the screening of the application site. And the applicant is looking for a bit more flexibility there, so that the screening may be agreed in each of the oncoming 2 years, and those details are to be agreed up front by the 1st of May each year. So the main issues which were identified in the report, the principle of the beach decking, the officer report highlights that this part of the beach is within the town centre area boundary, so where we'd be looking for these types of facilities. It's not a permanent loss of the open space, and it is only a small part of the beach. It's a renewal of a previous planning permission. There has been consecutive permissions for decking on this part of the beach, and again it is only a temporary planning permission, which is with regard to the visual appearance, again, it's highlighted it's a renewal of a previous permission, and it's not all year. It's only during the busy periods of the summer period, and there is scope to make some amendments also as part of the condition. In respect of the impact on amenities, seawall and flooding, those issues are all acceptable for the reasons outlined in the report. So the application is put forward with a recommendation to grant planning permission. There is just one issue which, has arisen slightly late in the day, and that's just to request perhaps a change to condition 5, just to clarify the extent of the decking which would be retained. So the suggestion is that members might be willing to let officers have some discretion on that. Sorry, I've just been past them. Okay, so I'll just go back to the photos, the retained area of the decking. I think the point being that the retained area of decking is a smaller area of decking than the whole area of decking that's shown on the plan. So the idea is that the condition will be amended slightly just to limit the extent of decking which is retained during the winter period.
Yeah, so I was just saying that if that's what's retained now, I'm not sure that particularly fits with condition 5 as it's written at present in various different ways, to be perfectly honest. So I think if that was considered acceptable, that was considered to members, then we may look to have to delegate power to the head of planning operations to make the condition fit with what's been allowed on this occasion, because that I don't think does fit at present.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burridge, for the presentation. Over to Ms. Hollow for speakers, please.
Thank you. There are no objectors registered, public objectors. On behalf of the applicant, we have Matt Annan. Let's come forward.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, members. My name is Matt Annan. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and Director of Pure Town Planning. I'm speaking in support of this application on behalf of the applicants, West Beach. The proposal seeks to extend the previous 2-year permission for a further 2-year period to include next summer, 2025, and summer 2026, and also to allow more flexibility to review the design, layout, and enclosures ahead of each summer. I wish to outline the reasons why we feel planning permission should be granted today, in line with the officer's recommendation. Firstly, in terms of the principle, the West Beach restaurant, to which the deck is linked to, opened in May, and so they've been in this location for 24 years. They've recently agreed a new 25-year licence with the council, which commences in June 2025. As well as the ground rent the council receives from the restaurant and beach decking, this restaurant facility employs 60 to 70 full-time and part-time staff and supports many other suppliers and related businesses. As set out in your case officer's report, there is no issue in principle. The application site lies within the town centre, and policy CS7 indicates this is the most appropriate location for retail, cultural, leisure and businesses uses. As discussed in the report, in terms of loss of open space, it has been repeatedly on previous consents concluded that a temporary loss of a relatively small area of the beach in the summer period and even smaller in the winter is not significant and would not result in the proposal being contrary to PS 31, recreation, play and sports. Furthermore, the benefits of having a facility that people can enjoy on the beach in the summer and in the winter, fully supported by economy and tourism policies, as set out in PCS 29. The seafront strategy supports a visitor experience stretching between the West Cliff and Boscombe Pier by developing a coherent and consistent linear space to create an ultimate vibrant beachfront. Secondly, character and appearance. A decking area associated with West Beach Restaurant has been there for 23 of the 24 years that the restaurant has existed, so it's become an established feature of this part of the beach in different guises. As noted in your report, the decking area contributes to the tourist function seafront period. The officers agree that a more intensive operation is acceptable given the location close to a pier, which is a busy hotspot, and consider that a smaller decking area can be remained during the winter when there are still many visitors still out and about, particularly on nicer days, such as yesterday. This scheme is deemed to enhance and complement the character and appearance of the area. One key consideration for your officers has always been how best to screen the necessary containers, which include the bar, back of house, as well as the toilets and storage facilities, to ensure that these are secure and that visual impact is acceptable. As can be seen from the photo this year, these were screened with vertical timbers of staggered heights to appear almost like a sandcastle, which I believe was a suggestion of the officer, as well as fencing and a pergola. There's a low fencing along the beachfront side, which also wraps around the sides and stretches back up the promenade to allow views across the site and also through. The reason we are also proposing a variation in Condition 4 is that this will provide the authority with further control over the design and layout, and allows the design to be reviewed from the previous years and agreed for the coming summer. For instance, if officers or members today would like anything changed, we can factor that in and agree ahead of next summer. By condition. Thirdly, the amenity. Given the site's central location, no immediate residential property, there will be no adverse impact in terms of noise and disturbance in this busy town centre location. The introduction of a decked area flush with the prom has a massive inclusivity benefit. Rather than be restricted to just the promenade, it provides access for wheelchair users and those with limited mobility to actually be on the beach and closer to the sea. Councillors, in summary, your planning officer and his team leader are in full support of this application, as are the tourism officer, the environmental health officer, BCP coastal engineers and the biodiversity officer. We hope you share the view of all your professional officers and move to grant to approve this proposal accordingly. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Annan.
And Councillor Bartlett.
Morning, members. Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to speak. This application is one that fits into my, or you either hate it or you love it, and many people love it. I know that. I'm very conscious of the fact that many young people in particular really enjoy that environment. But my objection is to the loss of the public open space. It's the principle of the loss of open space for commercial reasons. The space in the summer that is lost is large, and it is in the one of the busiest areas of the beach. Also, there is an impact on the loss of views. So the public amenity is lost in that it really blocks when you walk along the promenade, you can't see the pier and at certain points, and it is quite obtrusive where it is. The second point is the noise, and this is one that really does get to me because the large speakers are put on top of the bar area and it blasts out this deep boom, 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 boom music. So if you don't like that sort of music, I'm afraid you've got to put up with it because it's there all the time. And it really is, in my opinion, that is a really weak part of the operation, although many aspects are good. I do accept that. The other issue is a lack of conformance with previous conditions. If you go down there now today, you'll see that the tables and chairs and everything on the decking are still there, have not been removed. And there have been instances through previous years where even the porta cabins were left there during the period when it shouldn't be there. So there's this kind of theme that, you do what you like. And I have to say, I do object to the statement that was made just now, in that we can make the statement, make the condition in the planning approval fit what's there. That actually is really, I take strong objection to that. Planning decisions must be made in accordance with the planning policy. In this case, core strategy CS31 applies, and it states, the local planning authority will refuse planning permission development that results in the loss of public and private open spaces, including sports grounds and playgrounds, which contribute to recreational, visual, ecological, or environmental value, or an area contribute to a network of green infrastructure, except where it is demonstrated to be underused and surplus to requirements, and the benefits arising from development outweigh the loss of the space. This certainly isn't underused, and it certainly isn't surplus. Therefore, this development is actually contrary to this policy. Yeah, so that's my main objection to that. What I would say is if you are minded to grant this, contrary to that, if you could consider adding a condition that a noise management plan be agreed to be approved by the planning department prior to the operation of the season. And this is to overcome the issue regarding the noise that I've just mentioned. And as I say, a lot of people do have to endure that very loud music, which you can hear from a really long way away, right down the promenade. And I think it's very intrusive, frankly. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. I hand over to Mr. Burr.
Chair, I'll just got a comment on one of the references made there about the comment I made. I should make clear I'm not advocating that's something members would want to do as to changing the condition. I'm merely noting that it's undesirable to have a situation where there's apparently an ongoing breach if members are happy with what's being proposed. If members are unhappy with what they can see on the photographs, and obviously they'd want to retain that condition as worded, or perhaps up to the tweak that was identified, but then it'll be an enforcement issue, which is fine as well, but that's members' choice.
Thank you for clarifying. And Mr. Burridge, was there anything you wanted to come back about what's been said?
Thank you, Chair. I think also just to say on that condition, we were trying also to tailor it to the extent of the decking which has been retained, just to highlight that's a smaller area of decking, as I understand, than the area of decking which is there in the summer. So it was trying to highlight the fact that it's not all the decking, it's just the smaller part of the decking. In respect to the other issues that were raised, on the noise issue, the suggestion was that we could put a condition on with regarding noise. That is something which might be workable. We might be able to do that, obviously subject to committee's agreement that we could add a condition in respect of external noise, probably focusing in particular on music which is played. In respect of policy CS31, the officer report does address that issue. It is acknowledged that there would be that loss of space as part of the application, but that is balanced against the fact that it's only a small area of a much larger beach. It's not permanent, and that there are benefits associated with the proposal, namely the tourism benefits that provides. And with regards to the views and it being an obtrusive development, then we could, well, there's obviously higher screening around the back of house areas, but through the condition, that is obviously something which we can bear in mind and try and achieve an acceptable level of screening that would maintain the open views which characterises the beach to as fuller extent as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that detail. So over to members' questions, please. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty certain I remember this application when it came in first time. I noticed one of the objections raises an issue about litter and management of prevention of litter into the sea and on the beach. I think it was a consideration I had last time when this came up. Just wondered if this is waste management strategy. It has been deemed as adequate over the last few years.
Thank you. Mr. Burridge on the litter.
Sorry, I haven't got any comments on the existing situation, but there is a condition on the planning permission which asks for a waste management plan to be submitted and approved. So that is something which could be considered as part of that planning condition.
So is that an extant condition that would remain, or is that an additional condition we'd look to strengthen or bolster?
Well, I'll just check whether it's a condition on the previous planning permission, but it's a condition on the current application. I don't think it was a condition on the previous planning permission, actually. So it's a condition which the officers added to this planning permission. Oh, sorry, the recommendation.
Thank you for confirming. Any other questions? So just from me, so with regards to noise and disturbance, has there been any complaints to our environmental health or that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of to environmental health. Obviously, we did have the one objection which was registered on the planning application, which did talk about issues of noise, but my understanding is that there haven't been any complaints to our environmental health team.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salmon.
So just jumping back to condition 7 on the having to have a waste management plan, I wonder how explicit we can be about the waste management plan, because I think the best way to prevent the littering problem we've got on the beach, because the bins are always overflowing, the council can't get down there to empty them, I think, during the day because of the nature of the bins and all of that, would be to make sure that there's just no use of disposable packaging. Can we include that as part of that plan, that there'll be no disposable packaging used? So if they're giving away takeaways, that's provided in reusable packaging with a deposit scheme, instead of something that's going to mean more litter, because at the moment it does generate litter.
Mr. Burridge or Mr. Firth? Might be more.
Sorry, Chair, I was trying to work on something else. I apologise, I wasn't listening. So
Microphone.
I was trying to think about the last question.
We have a condition restricting material waste. Sorry,
Chair, can we move on? I'll hear what the point was, and I'll come back in a minute if you want to move on.
Yeah, okay.
So if you just want to repeat.
So just to restate it, I would like that waste management plan to include the provision that all of the packaging, reusable packaging rather than disposable, and that's reusable packaging that's issued with a deposit scheme rather than, you know, those horrible paper wrappers that you find everywhere. Glass bottles, you know, you pay an extra £1, you get your £1 back when you bring it back, that style of thing.
I mean, Chair, I think probably off the top of my head, what you perhaps could do is identify that as part of the waste management plan, it should include information to seek to control the use of that sort of thing to the extent it's practical to do so. And whether or not it would be possible to actually just stop it entirely, I think might be a little more challenging to the extent of how apparent is it on a case-by-case basis whether something would meet the criteria. So I'm thinking purely off the top of my head, I understand the sentiment and I understand we could certainly encourage and direct things towards that. Whether it would be possible to enforce an absolute ban, I'm not sure, because I think we might be down to trying to define exactly what met the criteria that we were putting forward. But happy to have further thoughts on that.
So I think it's really quite clear, isn't it? Is the packaging disposable or not? If they're issuing disposably packaged food, that is going to, no matter what the waste management plan is, that waste is going to end up in the bins that are already overflowing on the seafront. And we cannot increase the capacity for collection from those bins. You know, we've had those discussions. You can't get the trucks down there to empty them. So any waste management plan, so it sounds like we haven't had one before, if it is just they will put in some bins, people are human, they're normal, they will walk away from a restaurant, they'll use the other bins, and the overflowing state of those bins will get worse. So it's really, can we insist that there's no disposable packaging? And I think if we can't, there's no point in a waste management plan. It's just a fig leaf.
Okay, so I think we've...
So, Chair, I was going to say, so I think the problem, now I understand the point, sorry, a bit clear. I think part of the problem is might take a view that any packaging is in theory disposable in its most general sense, because you can dispose of it, you can throw it away. I think what we would come back to is what I said earlier. You're probably looking at the sentiment of having part of the waste management scheme to come up with mechanisms to minimise the use of disposable packaging or prevent disposable packaging from being taken off site. That's what I think the key point is. You don't want to start using bins elsewhere.
Yeah, ideally, I don't want it going in the bin at all. I want a deposit scheme. I like deposit schemes.
So I think, Chair, perhaps off the top of my head, my feeling was, well, you could identify that what you want within the waste management plan at this stage is to say we wanted to include measures to minimise the scope for waste to be taken off site. That's what I think is really packaging waste, I should say.
Thank you for that. We'll add more in the debate on that. Councillor Adams?
Yeah, it was only sort of a side point of broad disagreement, although agreement with the principle. I think it's vastly unfair to base it. Well, I know you said you want a deposit scheme, but we've got dozens of council prom cafes. Maybe we should start with them rather than making poor matey the business start the deposit scheme straight away. I think that's a bit grossly unreasonable, but that's just my view.
Okay, so if there aren't last questions, Councillor Martin.
I did have one of my residents came in to surgery a couple of days ago, and they did express concerns about this temporary decking because the sand is moving all the time. So what actually makes up the foundations that you put the decking on? Because surely that's more permanent, like concrete.
Mr. Burridge, is it just a decking laying on sand, or?
I'm not sure. Actually, the concerns have mainly been in the past about whether or not it's been attached to the sea wall, because that could cause damage to the sea wall, and I understand that that's not the case. But in terms of what it's actually attached to underneath, I'm afraid I don't know.
But that's it. So the temporary nature of it,
Yeah.
we agree it goes back to it. So I can't imagine it would be fixed or anything. Just the general weight of the structure.
I've had a resident come in and say they saw one being built, not this particular one, and that they were putting concrete struts down into the sand, which, if exposed at a later date, could become dangerous. That was my concern.
I think in this case it is appropriate to call the agent of the applicant just to confirm that technical.
Might need some assistance from my client, but has it been there since 2002?
2002.
So it's cantilevered, and I think back in 2002 the sand was a lot lower. Is that right? So you could
actually walk under it.
You could walk under it. So because of the beach replenishment, actually the beach has been built up to the level of the deck. So it's not going to go anywhere. It's been there for a while, but yeah, it can be removed easily by being unbolted.
Thank you for confirming that. Councillor Martin.
Sorry, another question. I was, because he said it's inclusive, and obviously people can only sit there if they're paying for a meal. If you've got a family member that's got special dietary needs, are the business going to allow that person to join them at a table?
I don't think that's a planning question. I think obviously
it comes down to inclusivity. That's all.
Yeah, it's is that something?
It's a public space. You're taking a public space. It's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think, Mr. Burridge.
So, sorry, is the question also just for the benefit of Mr. Firth, if there's customers using the business, but they have a child with them who has special dietary requirements, or an adult that's not eating or drinking there, can they sit with them?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that's a planning issue, but I mean, we couldn't impose who does and who doesn't use the facility. So I think that would be up to the business, but I can't see that that's going to be an issue if they've got members of that group that are paying customers.
Thank you for that. And did get nods from the applicant, so that doesn't seem to be an issue. Yeah. Okay, if there's no more questions, if we can go to the debate then, please. So, Councillor Gillett.
So yeah, thank you, Stephen, for bringing those things to our attention. I think conformity to conditions is important, but one thing I've always found is that the planning department are very good at dealing with breaches of planning. You just report it to them, and then someone seems to go out very, very quickly and get things get things sorted out. I think in terms of the site, in terms of how it works and how it interacts with the rest of the beach. I have a minimal experience with it, but last summer I thought, oh, for a week I'll take a beach hut on the beach. I decided that rather than work from home, I'll work from hut. And my observations of that are, firstly, the beach is very, very noisy in the summer. I mean, we're talking about this wasn't an area which had any music or anything like that. There's a huge amount of noise that comes off the beach. It's very obvious to your clients that you're not at home if you take a call. So it is a very, very noisy place. In terms of blocking the view of the beach, well, I had 16 bins in front of my hut, and none of them were full, and none of them were overflowing. In fact, I was half tempted to move one so I could actually see the sea. But I was only about 200 meters from this site, and so we were almost sort of like projecting what we think the beach is like. But actually, I didn't actually find there was no problem with rubbish, apart from it was obscuring my very personal view of the sea. So when you're looking at all of these conditions, I think it's important to think about what is actually there in reality. In our minds, we might be thinking, oh yeah, there's lots of litter on the beach. So I thought there were lots and lots of bins. Probably not too many bins, but when we're talking about conditions for the views and conditions for the noise and conditions for rubbish, those didn't echo with my experience from a beach hut 200 meters away from the site. Only last summer, I couldn't work in the hut because it was too noisy anyway. And there's one other thing as well, is that the beach does get very, very busy. But when you have a site where you have a restaurant, you have a greater intensity of people. So even if you've got 1,000 people on the beach and they all want 5 meters between them and the next group, when you stick people into a site where it intensifies, you can, I don't know how many covers they've got on this site, they could probably tell us, but it will probably be far more intense than the number of people on the beach. So if it's being used, obviously that's a condition on that, because if it's not being used, you're simply gobbling up public space. But if it's being used and commercially, you'd expect them to, they would be used, otherwise they won't be reapplying for planning, then actually it would actually increase the capacity for public space if people are not using the beach instead. Those are just my thoughts. I'll shut up.
No, good points. Thank you, Councillor Gillett. Councillor Tarling.
Well, that's quite an insight into your summers, Councillor Gillett. Thank you very much. I wasn't expecting that. But no, just to Councillor Bartlett, I've agreed with a lot of things he said at various different points related to his ward. This part of the beach, I think, by virtue of the fact that it's being used like this, and this is a very noisy part of the beach. I do hear what is being said, and a noise management plan might be something that members wish to consider. It may also fall into the licensing part of the function of the council as well, regarding sort of timings. But my experience of being on this part of the beach in Bournemouth, which I don't tend to frequent, I tend to go to Southbourne or even to Highcliffe Beach, which is much quieter, and we don't have the same extent here, is I think that we offer a wide range of experiences, beach experiences. We've got such a long bit of beach here, whereby those that like to be sitting very close to each other next to Bournemouth Pier can do. Myself, I like being a bit further away, and I would tend to avoid a place like this. However, it is part of our offer. I think the loss of amenity is outweighed by the benefits that we offer as a tourist destination to Christchurch. So I hear Councillor Bartlett, but I think in the balance of considerations, I think this outweighs it. I'm happy. I think if we grant this, I hear what Councillor Salmon is saying about the proposals regarding waste management, and I think a waste management plan is key, but I think his proposals are probably a bit overly restrictive and prescriptive. I do completely agree with the sentiments, though, about not adding to the litter or the rubbish load. One would hope that a restaurant like this is probably going to be using reusable plates and cups, and maybe not glasses, but if there's a washing facility there, that it's probably preferential to people leaving disposable barbecues and cling film on the beach, which is the alternative for that area. So I'm actually happy to support that we that we grant this variation, and perhaps with some additional conditions. The noise management plan, I think, will probably be covered by licensing and statutory nuisance anyway, and under the Section 6 of the Controlled Pollution Act, which the Environmental Health team would be enforcing. So a noise management plan might be something that we'd we want to consider, but I think it's going to be superfluous. Waste management plan, I think, again, if we delegate that to the officers, and certainly there might be a narrative we wish to add to that. I think that would be my two key concerns addressed. But, you know, I think by virtue that it's been added, as we've had this facility. A couple of other points, sorry, Mr. Firth referenced the making the application fit. I know what he meant, and certainly that image that showed if we allow this area of decking to be retained, to me that was that image showed a fairly benign area of beach to be retained, and the fencing I think is a pragmatic thing to stop the other bits being blown around or sand being blown around. So, you know, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Tarling, you made a proposal. Can we just clarify the condition? So condition 5, removal of the structure. So Mr. Firth was saying something on the lines to agree. I can't remember what wording you used. If you could.
Yeah, Chair. So I think on that, I mean, as I said, I hadn't seen the picture before, which is why I probably didn't flag it up and cross my mind earlier. But having seen the picture, it seemed to me that what was appearing on the picture, and I don't know if we can bring it up. Didn't in itself reflect the requirement of the condition as it stands at present. So the question is, members can keep that condition as it's currently worded, and therefore that would, I think, result in a number elements of that having to be removed, subject to enforcement action being taken, or they can seek to vary it and give power to the head of planning operations to amend the condition to reflect something like that, or something entirely different, depending on what members felt was reasonable in any specific set of circumstances. Chair, I think having looked at that as well, it's probably a further point I should make, which is a further complicating issue, but which members should have regard to. And I say this simply from a continuity point of view and recognising that there may be a discussion on this in relation to another application you'll be dealing with at this committee. It looks to me there that some of the fencing there is of a particular height. I'm aware that another condition and another permission considers that issue as well. All I would say is, in deciding whatever they consider is acceptable for this application, members would of course need to be mindful of that if, in relation to any other application they might be determining from a continuity point of view, and be able to justify any departures if they felt it appropriate. I don't know if that makes sense, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fair. So, Councillor Tarling, so the existing condition 5, obviously, as it says, is just talking about decking. Did you want to alter that?
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't quite at the point of making a proposal to grant this, but as you seem to be encouraging me down this route, I'm proposing then that we grant this with the condition 5 to delegate powers to the head of planning to vary the condition of the retention of the structure to match what's seen here. Mr. Firth just commented that there's other applications. We have to consider this in its, you know, as a separate application. I believe the conditions on the other applications and other applications we've had for this beach refers more to the fencing around the extended enlarged area rather than this area. This area is part of the smaller area. If you see on one of the plans, there's a number of different areas highlighted. So this is actually the smaller area. And I think the issues we've had on previous applications has been the wider fencing around the sort of seating area, that it's not too high. This is actually quite a way back from the beach front. And I think our concerns on previous applications have been this, you know, that we don't want a 6-foot fence going all the way down to the high tide line. This is obviously quite a way back at present. You know, obviously with global warming, that high tide line will probably take all that out anyway. God will have his say, I'm sure, at some point in the coming years. But so that we allow or delegate powers to vary condition 5 about the retention of the this area to match this image. I don't know how we'd word that, and that we delegate powers to the head of planning to agree the waste management plan, which I actually think is already in the condition, isn't it?
It is, like you say, but as Mr. Firth was saying, do we add, to Councillor Salmon's point, a little bit more to say, to have that conversation with the applicant to include minimising waste?
Sorry, through you, Chair. I do think that the whole purpose of waste management plan is to minimise waste, and to be overly prescriptive is to sort of tie the hands, not just of this application, but as Councillor Adams referred to, any beachfront activity. And I think there's a wider discussion to be had there, and I'm sure Councillor Salmon would probably support this, that we look at waste management throughout the whole of the seafront. My pickup on it was one of the objections that was listed, I think it's from Merrick Estate, was about potential hazard to the marine environment. And, you know, as we know, other people that aren't inside this facility will be taking crisp packets and other stuff there. And as you know, those foil crisp packets live for about 100 years in the marine environment. So, you know, I'm more worried about a crisp packet blown into the sea than a paper plate from a paper bag which has come from this establishment. So I think it's a proportionality, and I wouldn't want to be overly prescriptive on this application, but I do take Councillor Salmon's approach, probably with a contra discussion from Councillor Adams, that we probably need a wider look at this, but it's not for this committee. Thank you.
Okay, and I think you also said you didn't think there was need for a noise condition.
Not over and above the statutory requirements of nuisance. One man's noise is another man's party, isn't it? So it's you know, I don't go there to party. I'm a bit worried about Councillor Bartlett, that his pleasure enjoyment is not enjoyed, but I'm more than happy to welcome him along the beach towards Christchurch, where we have much quieter beaches.
Okay, thank you for that proposal. And Ms. Hurley, you've got those two conditions wording.
I thought it was just condition 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you.
And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Adams.
Happy to second.
Okay, further discussion? No further discussion. So we have a proposal to approve with a slightly amended in 5. So all in favour of that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
That's unanimous. Okay, that application is approved. Thank you. So we should now move to 6B, East Undercliff Drive to the right of East Cliff Lift, Bournemouth. And that's Mr. Burridge again, please.
Sorry, Chair, get there in the end. So this application relates to El Marino, which is East Undercliff Drive, application 19168R. And this application seeks the variation of conditions 1, 2 and 10 of application 2023 15059 AA to alter the previous permission, which was for the use of land as a outdoor event space for serving food and beverages with ancillary structures, and to extend that period of that permission until October 2027. So just a recap on the previous application that was approved. So, which this application relates to, it's a 2023 application, which was approved very recently, actually the 16th of April 2024, and I believe that was at Planning Committee. This is the site location plan, which outlines the application site in red down at the bottom of the screen. The next image might be more helpful, but the site is between those two blue arrows. And then just zooming out a bit, you can see the pier on the left-hand side, and that blue arrow is pointing to the application site. So just to give you some context as to where the site is. These are some previously approved elevation plans. So that's just and the east elevations, i.e. the side elevations of the approval. And then the front elevation, and that's when I say the front, I mean the entrance facing onto the promenade. And this is the site layout plan, which has been submitted. A bit hard to see, but hopefully it gives you an idea as to the intended layout. And perhaps more helpful is to show some photos in operation. This is last summer, so summer 2024. That's a view from the prom showing the entrance. This is a west-facing view showing the side elevation of the proposed scheme. You can see there was a higher hoarding around the back and lower hoardings towards the front. That's the view from the other side. So just recapping on the conditions, one of the conditions, condition 2, the previous condition restricted the use until the 1st of April 2025. The proposed variation to condition 2 would extend that use until the 1st of October 2027. And just to show at the moment the view, so in this instance there's nothing left of the scheme, it's all been taken away from last summer. So you can see in these views that we have an empty beach in the sites of where the restaurant was standing. And the other condition which this application focuses on is condition 10. The officer report highlights that as part of the previous permission, condition 10 did limit the height of the enclosures, and it's sought a height of 1.1 meters with a clear glazed screen above, and that not to exceed 1.8. So a solid screen up to 1.1 with a glazed screen up to 1.8 meters above. You can see, if I can go back, in these pictures, the hoardings or the screening was higher than that. The officer report does highlight this issue, but says advises that this obviously relates to the back of house area. So you're trying to screen some structures which you probably either the back of the containers. To condition 10, if I go back again, does adjust that slightly. So again, it's asking for that area to be those details to be submitted to the local authority and agreed, but it does take out that particular reference to the height. Again, main issues similar to the last application: the principle of the beach decking, the visual appearance, the impact on amenity, the seawall and the flooding. Those issues are all discussed in the officer report and are found to be acceptable in this instance. So on that basis, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions And just to highlight that there was an updated condition, I think it was for this one, in the addendum sheet that was sent round, and that was in respect of condition 10. Thank you, Jill. 10. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burridge. So, Ms. Hollyoak for objectors.
Thank you. So no public objectors. Speaking in support of the application is Matt Allen again.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello again, members. Some members may recall a previous application which came to Planning Committee in April this year, and it was granted, but only for a one-year permission. So sadly, if planning permission is not granted today, then it's likely that there'll be no facility here next summer, which I think is a massive mixed opportunity for the town and a loss in revenue for the council. The proposal before you seeks to extend this previous permission for a further 3 summers, which will tie in with the 5-year contract which has been awarded by the council to El Marino. The scheme also seeks to amend the condition to allow more flexibility to review the design and change these screening enclosures ahead of each summer as per the West Beach approval. Just for some background, BCP Council identified this location as a suitable site for a seasonal outdoor event space serving food and beverages, and sent out a tender of how it should look. El Marino, a long-established local Italian restaurant with 2 existing restaurants in Bournemouth, won the tender for the 21 and 22 summer seasons, and then in 2023 they won the tender for a 5-year contract. So El Marino have been in this site for the last 4 summers and have now become an established summer feature. In all this time, there have been no complaints, no environmental concerns, nor have there been any licensing, noise, antisocial or biodiversity issues. They already have a very strict noise and waste management plan in place, but also they engage well with Town Watch and are fully updated on what's happening with the town and are able to support, because being the midpoint between the 2 piers, they're actually naturally a hub for members of the public to come and seek help from lost children or first aid issues, which they can then signpost onto the relevant services. In terms of principle, it's set out in your case officer report that there is no issue. The site lies within the town centre boundary and is supported by the area action plan and the seafront strategy, which seeks to develop the ultimate vibrant beachfront. In terms of the character, the visual impact, whilst there is a low 1 metre high balustrade with glass windbreak above for the seafront side enclosure, which wrap round the side and stretches back up towards the promenades to allow the views across and through the restaurant from the front. It's also low along the front. The applicant has installed a clean white painted Mediterranean style screen to hide the 2 corners where the unsightly views of the rears of the container, which contains things like the back of the bar area, the kitchen, a little staff area, the toilets and storage, where it's really not nice to see that sort of thing when you're walking on the prom. So to screen it is in our view a better use of that, a better appearance. And this quality venue is actually reflected by El Marino Beach site being one of the highest ranked Instagrammable locations in Bournemouth, as well as very high TripAdvisor and Google ratings, something which a councillor mentioned previously at committee. By varying this condition 10, it will also provide the authority and members with further control over the design, similar to the West Beach approval just granted. Thirdly, in terms of as discussed in the report, in terms of loss of space, it's been previously deemed that the temporary loss of this relatively small area of beach in the summer period, which is then completely removed for 7 months of the year over the winter months, is not significant and would not result in the proposal being contrary to policy CS31. Again, having the benefits of a facility that people can enjoy on the beach is fully supported by the economy and tourism policies. This location is a quieter part of the beach when compared with, say, the West Beach, and is not surrounded by other tourist facilities. It was actually for this very reason that this location was identified by BCP themselves, so that a family-friendly dining experience could be provided, dispersing the football down the beach rather than condensing it all around the piers, in line with the tourism strategy and in stark contrast to the more beverage-led facilities. This facility has a play park. Councillors, in summary, The beach restaurant attracts many holiday makers, but crucially provides improved beachfront amenities for local residents, for dog walkers wanting to stop for a coffee, for runners, for swimmers, to name a few. The provision of al fresco dining is considered to make a positive contribution to the creation of a world-class beach resort, thus promoting economic development in the form of an improved tourism officer, without impacting on the character appearance of the area or openness of the beach. We hope that you share your view of all your professional planning officers and move to grant permission and vote in favour of approving this proposal accordingly. Thank you for time.
Thank you, Mr. Annan. And lastly,
Councillor Bartlett again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm making an objection, again, in principle about the loss of public space, but additionally about the impact on the character of the seafront, which is largely very much a natural sort of site. Frankly, my view is that this development is completely incongruous to the environment where it's located. I think it's worth looking at the history because it's not mentioned in the report, which I find quite odd because there are some very significant issues regarding the planning application here, which are not mentioned in the report. So if you go back to 2000, because we've learned that it's an established facility, but I have to say, you know, it's been refused planning consent, or the planning officers have refused or recommended refusal twice. Okay, so it's not that the planning officers are fully in support. In fact, the committee narrowly approved this at the last time it was the application came before you in April, I think, this year. So let's going back in 2021, 2022, the facility operated without planning consent. In December 2022, the planning consent was refused. But despite that, the council still went ahead and awarded a 5-year despite there being planning consent in place. I really object to that, how you can go ahead with awarding a contract in the knowledge that planning consent has just been refused. And that was the situation. In 2023, the site continued to operate, again, without planning consent. And it was not until 2024 that the planning board narrowly approved the application, which was in direct contradiction to the planning officer's recommendation to refuse it. And I think that was probably one of the reasons why this committee approved or granted it for 1 year, only 1 year. And there was a discussion about the revised seaside strategy. Well, it has been revised, but in that revised strategy, it says that any development has to be sympathetically to enhance the public amenity and open space. And in this case, the visual amenity is lost, and so is the public space. And I have to say, when you walk along the beach, the view is of the end of the beach is completely cut off. It's like there's a Berlin Wall been built right across the beach. And in fact, when the tide comes up, it comes up within just a few meters of the front of the restaurant, and you can't actually walk past it without getting your feet wet sometimes, I can tell you, when the weather's bad. So in conclusion, in conclusion, yeah, whilst the proposal does not result in the permanent loss of an open space, it nevertheless has a detrimental impact on the quality of the space. I consider that the proposal for this scale of operation in this important location for sea views is not acceptable. When considering the development plan policy and other material considerations, including the MPPF, the development would not be in accordance with the development plan, would materially harm the character and or appearance of the area. And the development plan policies considered in reaching this decision are set out in just a moment. Now, as I said, personally, I don't like this because of the main impact on the visual thing, and it's completely incongruous. But I believe that it is all decisions have to be made on policy. And this isn't about likes and personal delights and your personal effects, about what the policy says. And what planning officers have said to this committee is that the proposed decking enclosures and structures result in the loss of usable open space and result in a visually intrusive and cluttered form of development that have an adverse effect on the openness of the beach sand area. The proposal would therefore be contrary to policies CS29, CS31 and CS41 of the Bournemouth Local Plan Core Strategy. I believe you should refuse this application on policy grounds. And if you can't, if you're minded to approve it, you should explain why you can grant it contrary to these policies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. Mr. Burridge, was there anything you wanted to come back on?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just to clarify that, yes, the previous application, the AA application, did go forward with a recommendation to refuse, but that application was then allowed by committee. I can read the suggested refusal reason out if that helps, but it is considered that the proposed decking, enclosures and structures would result in the loss of usable open space and result in a visually intrusive and cluttered form of development that would have an adverse impact on the openness of the beach sand area. The proposal would therefore be contrary to policies CS29, CS31 and CS41 of the Bournemouth Local Plan Core Strategy. The application site lies within Flood Zone 3, which represents an area at high risk of tidal flooding. The National Planning Policy Framework states that a flood risk assessment must be submitted when development is proposed in such locations. The applicant has failed to submit an acceptable FRA, and therefore the flood risks proposed by the development are unknown.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that point. So over to members for questions. If there's no questions, we'll go straight into the debate. Any wanted to start? Councillor Martin.
Historically, I've always been against beach structures because what we don't want is 7 miles of cafes and restaurants and no actual beach eventually, you know, which has always been my concern. But I do accept that we are competing with other holiday resorts. We are a holiday resort, and we're competing with other holiday resorts, and these have become quite fashionable all over the world, all over Europe. And I think we've just got to go with the flow to some extent. That would be my comment.
For that, Councillor Martin. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think Councillor Martin hits on the key point here, and Councillor Bartlett mentions that somebody discussed about a revised beach, and I do remember I did raise this as a point of discussion. I'm actually minded very much. I think Councillor Filer spoke last time against the original. For the original application, said it was a lovely restaurant and a great facility. So it probably swung me at the time. Her take on it and going down there with the children and grandkids sounded like a fantastic thing. However, you know, I do take on board, and I think it's a balanced decision that we have to make here. And my comments about a revised beachfront strategy was exactly what Councillor Martin has just referred to. The fact we don't want like you find in Italy, where you've literally got concession, bit of public beach, which is probably less than 10% of the beach. We are a long way off that, and I think as is shown from the images here, the screening is appropriate for the facility. Looking at page 55 regarding the ability to walk past the high water mark, it's looking about 15 metres from high water mark. If it's very rough, then you know, maybe I'm not going to walk the beach side, I'm going to walk the promenade side. Again, it's in a location between the two piers, which is commercially the most beneficial area. We've got beach to the west. We've got beach to the east, which is you can get nice views of the sea without having beachfront concessions. I do take on board it is something between the two piers, which offers an attraction or somewhere to stop for a coffee or to find your lost children, if that's a genuine thing. Made me smile somewhat. I think that's what you're going to be using your facility for, have loads of lost children there. But nonetheless, I'm sure you'll do it very well. So yeah, I'm in support of this. Regarding the revised condition, I'm not completely sure why we need to revise that condition. What we see here on the image, I think, is fine, but I'm happy to have that delegated to our planning officers to agree what we're looking for, and certainly the images we've see on the screen now, I think, are appropriate for its location. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman-Law?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's pretty much bang on halfway between the two piers, that's going to be drawing people away from those two main access points, spreading the people out over the area. Rather than, people do tend to concentrate around the piers, and this is at the end of the public access road for the seafront car park. So it is going to be drawing people away, and I do like that the biggest key is for ASB and that sort of stuff is people being there. The more people you can have being around, and as was mentioned, I like the fact that it's kind of almost like a hub for support for people that need support. The prom, I mean, I'm quite a regular sort of visitor to the prom. Me and a friend or a couple of friends do ride down to Sandbanks from Boscombe Pier quite regularly. So when I know you can ride this bit any time of the year. Yeah, between the piers is fine. And the view of this side of the prom side isn't ideal, but it is only a very short stretch, and I think, as mentioned, as long as we don't end up with 1,000 of these things all next to each other all the way down the beach, I think they are a general good thing to have.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councillor Adams?
Again, echoing pretty much what the last three speakers have said. I spoke for and voted for it last time. But I didn't base it on the Instagram ability, even though that's what I said last time. But I let the guys sell their pizzas and let them hide the ugly bit. So I'm happy to propose it. I think it's good for the town, it's good for the beach, and just makes sense. So I'm happy to, subject to the conditions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Adam. And just on that point about the conditions, so obviously we're talking about consistency for the waste condition. We were happy that the waste condition, I think, included anything looking at the future about disposables. So that would be all included.
I think last time, Chair, you decided not to include anything specifically relating to disposables. So I guess from a consistency point of view,
we thought the existing gave wide enough reach.
Yeah, wide enough remit, I think, within the scope of the condition as worded was the view expressed previously.
And or the condition 4, as we've seen in the picture, is complete removal. So that is completely different, and that's what's been happened, and that's what's set out. So it's, do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Martin? You didn't want to say any more, right? Okay, right. Okay, that's fine. Anyone else wanted to speak? No. Okay, so we shall go straight to a vote then. So it is set at being approved and proposed and seconded as set out with conditions as set out. So those in favour?
Looks unanimous, Chair.
Okay, so that. Next item 6C, the Prom Diner, Undercliff Drive, Bournemouth. Thank you. Are you on mute, Tom?
Sorry, yes. Good morning, members.
Okay.
Okay, so, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Right.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is an application at the Prom Diner on the Undercliff Drive, Bournemouth. It's an application for replacement cladding, installation of balustrade entrance ramps and associated alterations. So it's coming before the committee today because it's a BCP Council submitted application on council-owned land. There haven't been any public objections or representations on the application. So this is the site location plan. It's an existing well-established cafe located to the west of Boscombe Pier, which you can see here. This is the site. It's set back from the promenade and the Undercliff Drive, which is used for car parking along this section of the beach here. This is just a closer view of the site. You can see again, it's set back from the roadway. So this is an aerial view of the site. You can see these are the buildings here. It's quite a long building. It's been used as a cafe in this section. There's a sort of function room here, a kiosk, and some public toilets on the end. Temporary consent was granted by the committee late last year for another of these seasonal dining areas on the beach you can see here, but that doesn't form anything to do with this application here today. So this is a photo of the site. The western end here has a cafe. It's been used as sort of American style diner. And there's a public sort of ice cream kiosk here. It's got this grey horizontal cladding you can see, and there's a small outside area which is enclosed by these metal railings and a gate here. And then further along the other end of the building, you can see there's a mixture of sort of painted, different coloured painted rendered sections and some brickwork. So there's a variety of materials on the existing buildings. So you've got existing floor plans and proposed floor plans on this slide here. You can see that there's no changes to the footprint of the building except for a new ramp structure to the front of this central section of the building. It's sort of longer ramp to improve the accessibility, replacing this smaller ramp here. This falls within the existing sort of site area. It doesn't encroach onto the Undercliff Drive, so there's no highway objections in that regard. The planning application therefore mainly relates to these aesthetic changes to the facade of the building. So it's proposed to replace all of these different facing materials with a sort of white painted vertical timber style cladding, and then replace a lot of these windows and doors with these sort of larger bifolding opening doors to sort of open up the cafe a bit more to the outside. And then the old metal railings are replaced with this glass balustrade, and again you've got these new ramps. So that's essentially the extent of the changes. The materials are considered appropriate for this seafront setting. They'll improve the tired appearance of the building and have no other amenity or any other impacts. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. So there are no registered speakers, so we go straight into councillor questions. No, if there's no questions, we can go straight into the debate. Councillor Adams.
I mean, if even Councillor Bartlett isn't concerned, we might be onto a winner. So I think it looks fine. I wasn't a fan of that ugly green on the outside of the building, so hopefully that goes. Happy to propose.
Yeah, I actually I think it's a bit dull, to be honest. I like the different colours and the pastels and stuff. It sort of throw back to the sort of halcyon days of Bournemouth, and I'm really struggling to think why you'd want a white painted timber cladding in a marine environment. It's architecturally, I think it's could be a lot better. You know, to have a monolithic white frontage on a seafront where, you know, you're going to have to, unless they're selling sunglasses there, you know, you're going to be walking up to this cafe with your eyes shut because it's going to be the sun bouncing off that white timber. I mean, I like having a don't get me wrong, I quite like the vertical breakup of it and the fact you're linking the structures together. But for me, having it all one white colour just doesn't. Again, this is just me personal preference and aesthetics. I just doesn't fly for me. And having painted timber just sounds ridiculous. You're looking at a maintenance issue. It's not necessarily part of the planning application, but you know, there's other materials out there that have better longevity. Even don't paint the timber. Why not have a, you know, cedar cladding? But again, you know, I'm glad something's being done because it does need to tidy up. But you know, I just think the architect is probably needs to try harder on it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gillett.
Yeah, there's one other thing I think about this site that's important to consider is that that area of the beach has become an area which has essentially become very accessible. People, you've got accessible beach huts, you've got the plastic runways that go down towards the beach, you've got the wheelchairs with the wide wheels, and actually having what they're focusing on here, I think, is that accessibility by widening the ramp, because those the beach accessible wheelchairs have those kind of like extra wide wheels, and I think actually that's an important part of the offering. I think actually it's adding a bit to that area, so I think it's worth bearing that in mind. So on that basis, I'm happy to second the proposal.
Okay, thank you for that. Any last points? No. Councillor Martin.
I agree with Councillor Tolan. It's white is a bit stark, but it's a move forward, you know, in terms of accessibility. I think that's what we've got to look at, and it could always at some stage, at some point in the future, perhaps after it's been done, they'll realise it's a bit stark and might look to paint it in seaside colours. If it's painted wood, it can be repainted in probably more pastel colours, more seaside colours at a later date, perhaps.
Okay, thank you for that. So if there's no further points, we'll go to the vote. So it's been proposed by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Gillett, as set out. So those in favour?
That's 8.
Those against?
1.
And abstentions?
None.
0. So that application has been agreed as set out. Okay, thank you. And that ends the meeting for today.